If you don't want to serve my wife's dinner, then find another place to live." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in the kitchen I had helped furnish, staring at my only son Marcus as he shouted at me with a fury I had never seen in his blue eyes. The same blue eyes his father Johnson had. Those eyes that used to look at me with love and admiration when he was a little boy were now filled with something I couldn't quite recognize. Contempt? No. Something worse. Indifference. Marcus was 32 years old, standing there in his wrinkled work shirt at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, his face red with anger as he defended his wife Jade. My daughter-in-law sat at the dining table behind him with her arms crossed, her carefully contoured face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity that I had learned to recognize over the past 8 months. She was 28, dressed in one of those trendy athleisure outfits that cost more than they should, her chestnut hair with its extensions pulled back in a high ponytail, and she was looking at me with barely concealed satisfaction. "Marcus," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "I'm not refusing to serve dinner. I'm simply asking why I should be expected to wait on your wife like household staff when I'm your mother." "Because you live in our house!" Jade jumped in before Marcus could respond, her voice sharp and entitled. "You don't pay rent, Megan. You don't contribute to groceries. The least you could do is help out around here instead of acting like you're too good to lift a finger." The lies came so easily from her perfectly glossed lips. I had paid $180,000 for the down payment on this house in Greenwich, Connecticut, as a wedding gift 3 years ago. I bought groceries every week, spending at least $400 each time. I had even paid to have their kitchen remodeled 6 months ago when Jade complained the cabinets were too dated for her Instagram photos. But pointing out these facts would only make me look defensive. And I had learned that with Jade, defending yourself was exactly what she wanted. It gave her ammunition. "Mom," Marcus said, and his voice had taken on that pleading tone he always used when he was trying to keep the peace. "Just this once, can you please not make things difficult? Jade had a really stressful day filming content, and she's exhausted. Is it really too much to ask you to bring her plate to the table?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw what the past 3 years had done to him. He had gained weight, maybe 25 pounds, and there were permanent dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders were hunched in that defensive posture of someone who had learned to make himself smaller, to take up less space. This wasn't the confident young man who had graduated summa cum laude from Cornell. This was someone who had been systematically broken down piece by piece. "You say that because you don't know the truth," I said softly, and I actually smiled. It was the same smile I used to give competitors across the negotiation table when I knew I held all the cards, and they were about to find out they had already lost. After 3 decades of building and running a financial consulting empire, I knew how to wait for the right moment to strike. Jade's expression changed so fast it would have been comical in any other situation. The smug satisfaction evaporated, replaced by something I had only seen flickers of before: genuine fear. She stood up from the table abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor I had paid to have installed. "What truth?" she demanded, her voice climbing an octave. "What are you talking about?" I reached into the pocket of my cardigan, a soft cashmere piece in dove gray that Johnson had bought me for our 30th anniversary, 8 years ago when he was still alive and our lives still made sense, and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I had imagined this moment for 3 months, ever since I had started compiling the evidence, and I had always pictured myself trembling with anger or anxiety. But I felt nothing but cold, crystal-clear clarity. "I'm talking about the truth of who you really are, Jade," I said, unlocking my phone with my thumbprint and opening the folder I had labeled Marcus Urgent. "The truth about why you married my son, the truth about what you've been doing for the past 5 months. The truth about the messages you send when you think no one is watching." Marcus had gone very still. "Mom, what are you doing?" I walked across the kitchen, just 6 steps, though it felt like crossing an enormous distance, and held the phone out to him. The screen displayed a text message conversation between Jade and someone whose contact name was listed as Photographer Work. The most recent message was from yesterday at 2:15 in the afternoon. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby." That hotel room overlooking the harbor, just you, me, and no interruptions. The timestamp was visible. The attached photo was visible too. A shirtless man in his mid-30s with the kind of physique that screamed, personal trainer, lying on rumpled hotel sheets. Marcus took the phone from my hand. His fingers moved automatically, scrolling up through the conversation. I watched his face as he read. First came confusion, then disbelief. Then something crumbled behind his eyes, some fundamental structure that had been holding him together. This is, he started, but his voice broke. He cleared his throat and tried again. This is your phone number. It wasn't a question. He had recognized it. The area code. The last 4 digits that she had written on a post-it note stuck to the refrigerator for emergencies. Those are fake, Jade shrieked, lunging forward to try to grab the phone. Marcus, she's making this up. She's been trying to break us up since the day we got married because she can't stand that you chose me over her. But Marcus held the phone away from her, his arm extended, still scrolling. His face had gone pale, the kind of pale I had only seen once before, when he got the call that his father had collapsed at his architecture firm and didn't survive the ambulance ride to the hospital. These are dated, he whispered. These go back 5 months. There are hundreds of messages. She edited them. Jade was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, her mascara running in black streaks. She had always been a good actress. I had watched her cry on command at least a dozen times, usually right before she got Marcus to agree to something expensive or unreasonable. Baby, please, you have to believe me. Your mother has hated me from the beginning. She's manipulating you. I almost felt sorry for her in that moment. Almost, because I knew what was coming next, and there was no amount of tears or manipulation that could stop it. The photographer's name is Derek Castellano, I said calmly, pulling out the manila folder I had left on the counter earlier that evening. I had prepared for this moment meticulously. He's 34 years old. He lives in Stamford. He's married, actually. His wife's name is Bethany. They have 2 children. I opened the folder and pulled out printed screenshots. These are his social media profiles. This is his website. And these, I laid out a series of photos, are pictures of him and Jade at the Harbor View Hotel in Norwalk. Different dates. Always on days when Jade told you she had brand partnership meetings or important content collaborations. Marcus wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the photos. His hands were shaking now, making the phone tremble. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. "How long have you known?" 3 months, I admitted. The weight of that answer sat heavy in the air between us. 3 months of watching my son come home exhausted from his marketing job. 3 months of watching Jade treat him like an inconvenience. 3 months of biting my tongue every time she demanded something, or belittled him, or made him feel small. 3 months of waiting for the right moment because I knew that if I had shown him earlier, he wouldn't have been ready to see it. 3 months? Marcus's voice cracked on the words. He finally looked up at me, and the betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than anything Jade had ever done to me. "You knew for 3 months and you didn't tell me?" "I had to wait until you were ready to see it," I said quietly. "If I had told you earlier, you would have defended her. You would have believed her version. You would have accused me of trying to interfere in your marriage." I knew this because it had happened before, smaller versions of this conversation over the past 3 years. Every time I had gently questioned something Jade did or said, Marcus had immediately jumped to her defense. Jade saw her opening. She rushed to Marcus, grabbing his arm, her tears flowing freely now. "Baby, please," she sobbed. "This is all lies. She's manipulating you. She's always been manipulating you. She couldn't handle that you finally had someone who truly loved you, someone who wasn't trying to control your entire life like she did. She's been planning this, don't you see? She's been creating fake evidence to break us apart because she can't stand to see you happy." But Marcus pulled his arm away from her. Not roughly, just firmly. He was still scrolling through the messages on my phone with his other hand. I could see his eyes moving rapidly back and forth, reading words that were destroying his world, one sentence at a time. "This message is from last Tuesday," he said hollowly. "You told me you were at a collaboration meeting with that skincare brand. 9 p.m. to midnight. He looked up at Jade. "This message says you were at the hotel. It has a photo attached. His finger hovered over the screen. "Should I open it?" "Don't," Jade whispered. "Please don't." He opened it. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't need to. I had seen all of them when I downloaded the data recovery software onto Jade's laptop 3 months ago, when she had asked me to help fix something with her Instagram account and left me alone with the computer for 30 minutes. I had seen the explicit photos, the detailed plans for the affair, the conversations where she laughed about Marcus with her friends, calling him easy to handle and financially stable if boring. Marcus made a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a gasp. He dropped my phone on the counter. His hands went to his face. For a long moment, nobody moved. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Jade's increasingly frantic breathing. "There's more," I said, because this wasn't finished yet. This was only the beginning of the truth I had been carefully documenting. I pulled out another set of papers from the manila folder. "These are bank statements. Jade took out a personal loan 3 months ago for $47,000 using this house as collateral. She forged your signature on the paperwork." Marcus's hands dropped from his face. "What?" "The money was spent on designer clothes, cosmetic procedures, and gifts for Derek," I continued, my voice steady even though inside I was breaking for my son. "There are credit card statements too. 5 different cards you don't know about, all nearly maxed out. Total debt of about $63,000, all in her name but tied to this address." "You're lying," Jade said, but her voice had lost its conviction. She was looking at the papers in my hand like they were a poisonous snake. "I have friends in banking," I said simply. "I called in some favors. Everything is documented and legal. Marcus has a right to know about financial obligations tied to his property." I set the papers on the counter next to the photos. "But that's not even the worst part. I need to go back to understand how we arrived at this moment, back to when everything in my life felt like it was falling apart, and I made the decision that led me to this kitchen, to this confrontation, to watching my son's world crumble in real time. 6 years ago, Johnson died. My husband of 33 years, the man who had been my partner through every triumph and failure, collapsed in his office at the architecture firm he had built from nothing. Massive heart attack. The doctors said he was dead before he hit the floor. He was 62 years old, and we were supposed to have decades left together. We had plans, travel, grandchildren someday, a retirement filled with all the time we had sacrificed during our careers. Instead, I got a phone call at 2 in the afternoon while I was in a board meeting, and my entire world ended in the time it took to drive to the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was already gone. They let me see him. His face was peaceful, they said. I remember thinking that was a cruel thing to say. There was nothing peaceful about a man dying at his desk, alone, without his wife holding his hand. The worst part, the part that still keeps me awake some nights, was that Johnson died 3 days after having a terrible argument with Marcus. Our son had dropped out of his MBA program at Columbia after just 1 semester. Johnson was devastated. He had sacrificed so much to pay for Marcus's education, had such high hopes for his only child. They fought in our living room, voices raised, saying things they couldn't take back. Johnson told Marcus he was throwing his life away. Marcus told his father he was suffocating him with expectations. They hadn't spoken since that fight when Johnson collapsed. Marcus didn't come to the hospital for 2 hours after I called him. When he finally arrived, the guilt on his face was unbearable to witness. He stood next to his father's body and sobbed like a child, saying, "I'm sorry," over and over, until his voice gave out. I held him, this grown man of 26 years old, and I felt him break into pieces in my arms. After the funeral, something changed in Marcus. He became quiet, withdrawn. He moved back into our house for 3 months, barely speaking, barely eating. I was drowning in my own grief, trying to keep my consulting company running while feeling like half of me had been torn away. I wasn't there for him the way I should have been. I see that now. I was so lost in my own pain that I didn't notice my son was disappearing too. 8 months after Johnson died, Marcus met Jade at some corporate event where she was working as a temporary receptionist. He came home and told me about this amazing woman who made him feel alive again. She was 25, beautiful, ambitious. She listened to him, he said. She made him feel like he mattered. I was so relieved to see light come back into his eyes that I didn't ask the right questions. They dated for 4 months before Jade called me crying, saying she was pregnant. Marcus proposed the next day. I had concerns. It was so fast they barely knew each other, but I kept my mouth shut. I had already lost my husband. I couldn't risk losing my son, too. So I smiled and welcomed Jade into our family and wrote a check for $180,000 as a down payment on a house in Greenwich because Marcus's salary as a junior marketing associate couldn't cover it. Jade miscarried at 9 weeks. I went to the hospital with them, held her hand while she cried, brought her flowers and comfort food during her recovery. She seemed devastated. Marcus seemed devastated. They got married anyway. 3 months later, a small ceremony because Jade said she couldn't handle anything big after the loss. I paid for the wedding too. $30,000 for an intimate gathering of 50 people at a country club. The first year of their marriage, I rarely saw them. I was still running my company, still trying to fill the enormous hole Johnson had left in my life with work and more work. I expanded aggressively, took on too many clients, worked 16-hour days. Classic avoidance behavior. My therapist told me I was heading for burnout. She was right. 2 years ago, at 56, I sold my company for $8.4 million. I was done, exhausted, financially secure for the rest of my life, but emotionally bankrupt. I retired to the mansion Johnson and I had built together in Greenwich, and suddenly I had nothing but time. Time to rattle around in 8,000 square feet of empty rooms. Time to remember every conversation Johnson and I had in every corner of that house. Time to suffocate in loneliness. I tried to fill the void, lunch with old friends who still worked and couldn't relate to my aimlessness, charity work that felt hollow, travel that felt pointless when I had no one to share it with. I called Marcus every week, but our conversations were brief and awkward. He was busy with work. Jade was busy with her influencer career that seemed to involve a lot of shopping and very little actual influence. They rarely invited me over. 8 months ago, everything changed. Marcus called me on a Sunday afternoon and asked if I wanted to come for dinner. When I arrived, Jade was pleasant in that performative way that immediately set off my instincts. Over salmon that I later learned Marcus had cooked, not Jade, my son suggested that I move in with them. "Just temporarily, Mom," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "We know the house is too big for you now, and we have that guest room with the private bathroom. You could stay with us while you figure out what you want to do with the mansion. Sell it, rent it, whatever. But you shouldn't be alone in that place." The relief I felt was overwhelming. Someone wanted me. My son wanted me close. I wouldn't be alone anymore in that mausoleum of memories. I said yes before dessert was served. I moved in 2 weeks later, bringing only what would fit in the guest room. Clothes, personal items, photographs of Johnson. I kept telling myself it was temporary, just a few months while I sorted out my life. But secretly, I hoped it would last longer. I hoped I had finally found my way back to my son. The first warning sign came on day 3. I had made breakfast for everyone. French toast, bacon, fresh fruit. Jade came downstairs in her pajamas, looked at the table and said, "I don't eat carbs before noon, Megan. It bloats me for my photos." She took a banana and went back upstairs. Marcus ate quickly and left for work, barely making eye contact. By the end of the first week, Jade had established rules. I couldn't use the living room after 7 p.m. because that's when she unwound and needed space. I couldn't have friends over without clearing it first because she needed to maintain her home as a sanctuary. I couldn't reorganize anything in the kitchen because she had a system. I told myself these were reasonable boundaries. This was their house after all, even though I had paid for it. I was a guest. I needed to be accommodating. By month 2, the rules had multiplied. Don't make noise after 9 p.m. Don't leave dishes in the sink. Don't park in the driveway if Jade was expecting a delivery. Don't cook anything with strong smells because it affected her content creation. Don't. Every boundary was framed as reasonable, but the cumulative effect was suffocating. Marcus started working late, 10, 11 p.m. some nights. When I asked if everything was okay, he said the agency was demanding. But I noticed he seemed relieved to be away from home. I noticed he never looked directly at Jade anymore. I noticed the way he flinched slightly when she called his name. 3 months in, I started paying attention to Jade's patterns. She left the house 3 or 4 times a week for brand meetings and collaboration sessions that lasted hours. She was constantly on her phone, smiling at the screen in ways she never smiled at Marcus. She spent money like water, packages arriving daily, shopping bags filling the hall closet, credit card receipts left carelessly on the counter, showing purchases at luxury stores. I didn't say anything. I had learned that questioning Jade led to tears, accusations of not being supportive, and Marcus taking her side to keep the peace. So I watched, and I started to document. 4 months ago, Jade made a mistake. She asked me to help her with her laptop because Instagram wasn't loading properly. She left me alone with the computer for 30 minutes while she went to her Pilates class. I fixed the Instagram issue in 5 minutes. Then I spent 25 minutes installing data recovery software that would sync with cloud backups of her messages. I told myself I was protecting Marcus. Maybe that was true. Or maybe I was just a lonely widow who needed to feel useful, needed to have a purpose again. Either way, I started seeing things I wished I hadn't. Messages to friends calling Marcus boring but stable. Messages to her mother about dealing with the old lady until we can get our own place. Messages to someone named Derek that started friendly and quickly became intimate. 5 months ago, the affair started. I watched it unfold in real time through recovered messages. The escalation from flirting to explicit photos to hotel room assignations. I took screenshots of everything. I backed everything up in 3 separate cloud accounts. I consulted a lawyer about what evidence would be admissible and what privacy laws I might be violating. I was careful, methodical. I had spent 30 years in business negotiations. I knew how to build an airtight case, but I didn't tell Marcus, not yet, because I knew my son. I knew that if I came to him with accusations, he would defend Jade. He would say I was jealous, controlling, trying to sabotage his marriage. The guilt he carried about his father made him desperate to make this relationship work, as if a successful marriage could somehow atone for that last, terrible fight with Johnson. So I waited. I endured Jade's increasingly outrageous demands. I bit my tongue when she made subtle digs about my age, my outdated clothes, my boring lifestyle. I smiled when Marcus took her side. I played the role of the accommodating mother-in-law who was just grateful to be included. And I gathered evidence. Bank statements showing the fraudulent loan. Credit card bills for charges Marcus knew nothing about. Hotel receipts. Screenshots of hundreds of messages. Photos, a complete timeline of betrayal. 3 months of this, 3 months of watching my son become smaller and sadder, while his wife became bolder and crueler. 3 months of waiting for the right moment. That moment came tonight, when Jade decided to push 1 step too far. When she demanded I serve her dinner like I was hired help. When Marcus, exhausted and manipulated, actually yelled at me for the first time in his adult life. When I realized that if I waited any longer, I might lose him completely. So I stopped waiting. I showed him the truth. And now we were here, in this kitchen, with everything broken open and bleeding. The worst part? Marcus repeated, his voice hollow. He was still holding my phone, still staring at the messages that had just destroyed his understanding of his marriage. What could possibly be worse than this? I pulled out the final section of documents from my manila folder. These were the ones I had hesitated to include, the ones that showed premeditation so calculated it made my stomach turn even now. These are messages from before you got married, from when Jade was still deciding whether you were worth the investment. Jade made a sound like a wounded animal. "Don't," she said, but it wasn't a plea. It was a threat. "Megan, don't you dare." I ignored her and handed the papers to Marcus. They were printed screenshots of text conversations between Jade and her sister Rachel, dated 4 years ago. "Read the one from March 14th, I said quietly, "the day after she met you." Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the papers. I watched his eyes scan the words, saw the exact moment he reached the message that read, "Met a guy at the reception desk today. Marketing manager, drives an Audi, wore a Rolex. Did some research. His mom is loaded. Sold her company for millions. This could be my ticket out, Rach." "I was joking," Jade said desperately. "It was a joke between sisters. You can't take that seriously." Keep reading, I told Marcus, my voice gentle because I could see he was barely holding himself together. Go to June 2nd. June 2nd was the message where Jade told her sister she was pregnant. But it wasn't an announcement filled with joy or fear. It was strategic planning. Got pregnant on purpose last week, the message read. Stopped taking the pill 3 weeks ago and didn't tell him. He's going to propose now, has to. His mom will make sure of it. She's desperate for grandkids, and she's already trying to buy my affection. This is actually perfect timing. Marcus sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. The papers fell from his hands and scattered across the floor. You planned the pregnancy, he whispered. You stopped your birth control without telling me. I wanted a baby with you. Jade was crying hard now, her voice rising to a near shriek. I wanted to start our family. Is that such a crime? And the miscarriage? Marcus looked up at her with eyes that had gone completely dead. Were you actually devastated? Or were you relieved that you could still get married without being tied down with a child yet? The silence that followed was answer enough. I saw it on Jade's face, the brief flash of something that might have been guilt before she rearranged her features back into wounded innocence. How dare you, she breathed. I lost our baby. I went through that pain, that grief. Read the message from September 9th, I said, and I hated myself for how clinical my voice sounded. After the miscarriage, Marcus bent down and gathered the papers with mechanical movements. He found the right date. This message was also to Rachel. I know I should feel worse about the miscarriage, but honestly I'm relieved. A baby would have complicated everything. Now I get the wedding, the last name, the house his mom is buying us, and I can still do whatever I want. Plus, Marcus is so guilty and sad that he's not questioning anything. It's actually working out better than I planned. Something broke in Marcus in that moment. I could see it happen. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. His shoulders curved inward. His head dropped. A sound came out of him that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a gasp for air. It was the sound of someone's entire world being unmade. I moved toward him instinctively, but Jade got there first. She fell to her knees in front of him, grabbing his hands. Baby, please, she sobbed. That was years ago. I was young and stupid and scared. But I fell in love with you. Really in love. Everything changed. Those messages don't mean anything now because what we have is real. Marcus pulled his hands away from her. Get away from me. Marcus, get away from me. Each word was punctuated with a tremor that might have been rage or grief or both. Don't touch me. Don't come near me. Jade stood up, stumbling backward. Her tears had stopped abruptly. That should have been my first clue about what was coming next, but I was too focused on my son to pay attention to her shifting strategy. Fine, Jade said, and her voice had gone cold. You want to believe your mother's twisted version of everything? Go ahead. But don't forget that I know things too, Marcus. I know about the depression medication you hide in your desk drawer. I know about the therapy sessions you've been lying about. I know about that night 2 years ago when you had too much to drink and told me you sometimes wish you had died instead of your father. Marcus flinched like he'd been slapped. I felt my own face go hot with protective fury. That's enough, I said sharply. No, Megan, it's not enough. Jade turned to me, and the mask had completely dropped now. This was the real Jade, the one I had suspected existed beneath all the practiced tears and manipulative sweetness. You think you're so smart, collecting all your little evidence, playing detective, but you're just a lonely old woman who can't stand that her son chose someone else. You've been trying to sabotage us from day one. I paid for this house, I said quietly. I paid for your wedding. I've bought your groceries, funded your shopping addiction, and kept my mouth shut while you systematically destroyed my son's self-worth. I haven't sabotaged anything. You've done that all by yourself. Right. And there it is. Jade laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound. The money. It always comes back to your money. You think that gives you the right to control our lives? You think that makes you some kind of martyr? You're not his mother. You're his bank account with opinions. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. It was too close to fears I had carried for years, that I had tried to buy back the time I hadn't spent with Marcus during his childhood, that I was using money as a substitute for emotional connection. But Marcus stood up, and his voice was steady for the first time since he'd started reading those messages. My mother has never tried to control me. She gave us that money as a gift, no strings attached. She moved in here because I asked her to, because I was worried about her being alone. And you," his voice cracked slightly, "you took advantage of that. You took advantage of her generosity and my guilt and my grief, and you built yourself a comfortable life on our emotional damage." "Oh, please," Jade scoffed. "Your grief? Marcus, your father died 6 years ago. At some point you need to get over it and move on like an adult. I've been patient with your depression and your anxiety and your constant need for validation. But I'm done pretending I'm going to spend my life catering to a man who can't even stand up for himself." The cruelty of it took my breath away. I had known Jade was manipulative, selfish, narcissistic. But I hadn't fully understood how deep her contempt for Marcus ran until I heard her say those words with such casual viciousness. Marcus just looked at her. "You're right," he said finally. "I haven't stood up for myself. I've let you manipulate me, belittle me, control me. I've made excuses for your behavior and blamed myself for your unhappiness. But that ends now." "What are you saying?" For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Jade's face. "I'm saying I want a divorce." The words hung in the air. Jade stared at him like she couldn't quite process what he'd said. "You can't be serious. Over some old text messages? Over your mother's paranoid conspiracy theories?" "Over the affair," Marcus said flatly. "Over the fraud. Over the lies about the pregnancy. Over the fact that you've been using me from the beginning." He picked up my phone from where he'd left it on the counter and started scrolling again. "How long did you think you could keep this up? Did you have an exit strategy? Were you going to wait until you could get a bigger settlement in the divorce?" Jade's eyes narrowed. "If you divorce me, I will take you for everything you have. This house, your savings, your future earnings. I'll tell everyone you were abusive. I'll ruin your reputation at your company. I'll make sure you never work in marketing again." "There it is," I said softly. The real threat. Not tears this time. Just pure, calculated manipulation. Jade whirled on me. "Shut up. This is between me and my husband. You've already done enough damage, you interfering old bitch. You couldn't stand to see Marcus happy, could you? You had to poison him against me because you're jealous that I gave him something you never could. Actual love and attention instead of guilt, money, and absent parenting." The words were designed to wound, and they did. But I had spent 3 decades in boardrooms with men who thought they could intimidate me. I knew how to keep my face neutral even when I was bleeding inside. "I have recordings," I said calmly, "from the past 2 months. Conversations you had with your friends when you thought no one was listening. Connecticut is a one-party consent state for audio recording. I am one party to conversations that happened in my presence. The recordings are perfectly legal." Jade went very still. "What recordings?" I pulled out my phone and opened a different app. "This one is from 6 weeks ago. You were having brunch with your friend Madison in the backyard. I was reading on the patio around the corner. You didn't know I could hear you." I pressed play. Jade's voice came through the speaker, bright and cheerful. "Honestly, if Marcus tries to divorce me, I'll just cry abuse. It's so easy to make people believe that shit. I've already been documenting his angry outbursts on my private Instagram. A few carefully worded posts about feeling unsafe, maybe a strategically placed bruise or two, and everyone will be on my side. Then I take him for everything and move on to someone better." Madison's voice responded, "Girl, you're evil. I love it." Jade's laugh. "I'm not evil. I'm practical. Marcus is a stepping stone. Always has been." I stopped the recording. Marcus had gone white. Jade looked like she was calculating how much damage control she could still do. "You can't use that," she said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "That's entrapment or something. It won't hold up." "Actually, it will," I said. "I've already consulted with 3 different attorneys. Everything I've collected is legal and admissible. The messages recovered from your computer, you asked me to access it, which gave me permission. The recordings, I was present for all of them. The financial documents, Marcus has a right to know about debts and loans tied to his property. You have no legal standing here, Jade." "I'll fight this," she said, but she was backing toward the door now. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll make this so expensive and so public that you'll both regret it." "No, you won't," Marcus said, and his voice was stronger now. "Because if you fight this, Mom will release everything. The affair, the fraud, the recordings where you talk about faking abuse. Your Instagram following might be small, but it's enough that this would go viral. Every brand you've ever worked with would drop you. Your family would know the truth. Everyone would know who you really are. Jade's face contorted with rage. You're pathetic, Marcus, both of you. You deserve each other. The failure son and the absent mother, finally bonding over their mutual dysfunction. I should have left you years ago. But you didn't, I said. Because you were waiting for the right moment to extract maximum value. You underestimated me, Jade. You thought I was just a lonely old woman you could manipulate. But I built an $8 million company from nothing. I know how to identify a liability and how to eliminate it. Is that what I am to you? Jade spat. A business liability? No, I said quietly. You're someone who hurt my son. And I will always protect my child, even when he's a grown man who should have been able to protect himself, even when it means watching him hurt, even when it means waiting months for the right moment to act. Jade grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm leaving. When I come back, I expect both of you to be gone. This is my house. No, Marcus said. This is my house. My name is on the deed. You're the one who's leaving. You have 48 hours to pack your things and get out. After that, I'm changing the locks and filing a restraining order if necessary. You can't do this. I can, and I am. Marcus walked to the front door and opened it. 48 hours, Jade. I suggest you start packing. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. She stood there in the kitchen, her face a mask of rage and calculation, clearly trying to figure out if there was any angle left to play. But she must have seen something in Marcus's expression, or maybe in mine, that told her this was over. This isn't finished, she hissed. You think you've won, but you haven't. I will make your life hell. You already have, Marcus said tiredly. For 3 years. I'm done now. Jade looked at me one last time. I hope you're happy, Megan. You got what you wanted. Your son all to yourself again, just like you've always wanted. But he's broken, and you're the one who broke him first. I just finished what you started. Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her so hard the windows rattled. Marcus and I stood there in the sudden silence, not looking at each other. Is she right? Marcus finally asked, his voice small. Did you break me first? I moved to him then, closing the distance between us. I made mistakes when you were growing up. I prioritized work over being present. I let your father do most of the emotional heavy lifting. Those are facts, and I'm sorry for them. But I never stopped loving you. I never used you. And when I saw what Jade was doing to you, I didn't interfere immediately because I knew you needed to be ready to see it yourself. 3 months, he said, and there were tears on his face now. You watched her treat you like garbage for 3 months. I've endured worse in business negotiations, I said, trying to smile, and I would do it again if it meant protecting you. Marcus broke then. He folded into me like he had when he was a little boy, and I held him while he sobbed. My strong, brilliant son who had let himself become convinced he was weak and worthless. My child who had been so damaged by grief and guilt that he'd been easy prey for someone like Jade. I'm sorry, Mom, he choked out between sobs. I'm so sorry. The things she said to you, the things I let her get away with. Shh, I murmured, stroking his hair like I used to when he was small. You were manipulated by someone who's very good at manipulation. That's not your fault. But I should have seen it. I should have protected you. You were just trying to survive, I said gently. That's all any of us can do sometimes. We stood there in the kitchen for a long time, holding each other while the evening darkened outside. And I thought about Johnson, about how he would have handled this, about how much Marcus needed his father right now. But Johnson was gone, and I was here, and I would have to be enough. Eventually, Marcus pulled back, wiping his face. What do I do now? Now? I smiled at him, a real smile this time. Now we call a divorce attorney. We document everything. We protect your assets. And we start figuring out who you are without someone telling you who you should be. I don't know if I remember how to do that, he admitted. Then we'll figure it out together, I said. That's what family does. Jade didn't leave that night. I suppose I should have expected that. People like her don't give up power without exhausting every possible angle first. Instead, she went upstairs to the master bedroom and locked the door. Marcus and I sat in the living room, neither of us quite knowing what to say or do. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion that made every movement feel like pushing through water. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you're so clever, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. Watch your back, old woman." I showed it to Marcus. He closed his eyes and took a long breath. "She's trying to scare you." "I know." I deleted the message and blocked the number. It won't work. But 3 hours later, at 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed again. Different number, same threat. "I will destroy you both. You'll regret the day you decided to interfere in my marriage." Then another message, this time with a photo attached. It was a screenshot from Jade's Instagram story, a post I hadn't seen yet because I didn't follow her account. The image showed her face with artfully smudged makeup, eyes red from crying. The caption read, "When your own family turns against you and you realize the people you trusted most were plotting your downfall all along, sending love to anyone else dealing with toxic in-laws, you're not alone. Family betrayal, toxic family, mental health matters." Marcus grabbed my phone and stared at the screenshot. She's already starting her victim campaign. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This was the part I had worried about. The part where Jade tried to control the narrative publicly before the truth could come out. How many followers does she have? Last I checked, around 47,000. Marcus was scrolling through her Instagram now on his own phone, his face getting paler with each swipe. She's posted 6 stories in the last hour, all of them hinting at some major betrayal. She's getting hundreds of comments asking what happened, offering support. I leaned over to look. The stories were masterfully constructed, just vague enough to avoid specific accusations, but detailed enough to paint herself as the victim of unnamed family cruelty. One showed her packing a suitcase with shaking hands, captioned, "When you realize you're not safe in your own home anymore." Another was a close-up of her tear-stained face with the caption, "3 years of my life wasted on people who never valued me." "She's going to spin this," Marcus said hollowly. "By tomorrow morning, all her followers will think we abused her or threw her out for no reason. She'll have thousands of people on her side before we can even begin to defend ourselves." "Then we don't defend ourselves," I said. "Not publicly, not on her terms." Marcus looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Mom, she's going to destroy our reputations. My company follows her Instagram. My colleagues, my friends, they're all going to see this and think I'm some kind of monster." "Let them," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Jade's making a critical mistake right now. She's creating a public record of her victim narrative before she knows what evidence we're going to present. Every lie she tells now is going to make the truth that much more damaging when it comes out." "But what if the truth doesn't matter to people?" Marcus's voice cracked. "What if they believe her version anyway because it's more compelling? The poor young wife betrayed by her wealthy mother-in-law and spineless husband. That's a great story. People eat that stuff up." He was right, and we both knew it. In the court of public opinion, Jade's narrative had all the elements of a viral sympathy story. But I had learned something in my decades of business. The truth has a way of emerging eventually, and the people who lie the loudest often fall the hardest when their lies are exposed. "Trust me," I said, "just for a little while longer. Trust that I know what I'm doing." Marcus studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded, exhausted. "Okay. But if this backfires—" "It won't," I said, with more confidence than I felt. The next morning, Jade came downstairs dressed immaculately. Full makeup, designer athleisure, her hair styled perfectly. She looked like she was about to film content, not pack up her life. Marcus and I were having coffee in the kitchen. The tension when she walked in was suffocating. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she announced, pouring herself water from the filtered pitcher. "He says I have a strong case for spousal support, and possibly even a portion of this house's equity, given that I've contributed to the household for 3 years." "Contributed how?" Marcus asked flatly. "By spending money we didn't have? By having an affair? By committing fraud?" Jade's smile was cold. "By being a wife, by supporting your career with my emotional labor, by giving up my own career opportunities to build a home with you." She took a sip of water. "My lawyer says that evidence obtained through spying and invasion of privacy might not be admissible. He's confident we can get most of your so-called proof thrown out. I said nothing. I just pulled out my phone and opened a different folder, one I hadn't shown Marcus yet. Does your lawyer know about these? I turned the screen to show a series of emails. They were from Jade's personal account to Derek. But these weren't love notes or explicit photos. These were detailed plans. We should wait until the 3-year mark, one email read. That's when spousal support kicks in at a higher rate in Connecticut. Then I'll file for divorce, claim emotional abuse, and take him for everything. His mother's money is technically separate, but I can probably get him to settle for a big payout just to avoid the public mess. Jade's face went blank. Where did you get those? You left your email logged in on the living room iPad 3 months ago, I said calmly. I might be old, Jade, but I'm not stupid. I know how to forward messages to myself. Those are private communications, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. You had no right. I had every right to protect my son from someone who was actively planning to destroy him financially and emotionally. I stood up, and I let every ounce of the authority I'd cultivated over 30 years in business settle into my posture. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your belongings today, not in 48 hours. Today, Marcus is going to file for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. You're going to sign whatever settlement he offers, which will be far more generous than you deserve. You'll get to keep your car, your personal belongings, and $10,000 to help you reset your life. 10,000? Jade laughed, but it was shrill. You're insane. I want 200,000 at minimum. You're not in a position to want anything, I said quietly. Because if you fight this, if you try to drag this out or make it public, I will release everything, not just to social media, to Derek's wife, to the companies whose products you've promoted, to the bank that gave you the fraudulent loan, to every single person in your family and friend circle. I will make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Jade looked between Marcus and me. You're bluffing. Am I? I opened another app on my phone. I have Derek's wife's phone number. I have the email addresses for every brand partnership you've listed on your media kit. I have your mother's contact information, your sister's, your college roommates. I've been thorough, Jade. That's what I do. For the first time since I'd met her, Jade looked genuinely afraid. Not the performative fear she used to manipulate Marcus. Real fear. The kind that comes from realizing you've underestimated your opponent and it's too late to recover. This is blackmail, she whispered. No, Marcus said, standing up beside me. This is consequences. Maybe the first real ones you've ever faced. Jade stared at us both for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. We heard her moving around in the bedroom, drawers opening and closing, the sounds of someone frantically packing. Marcus turned to me. Did you really contact all those people? I have their information ready, I said. Whether I use it depends entirely on what Jade does next. You're terrifying when you want to be, Marcus said, but he was almost smiling. I forgot that about you. I learned a long time ago that the best weapon in any negotiation is information and the willingness to use it, I said. Jade thought she was the only one who knew how to manipulate a situation. She was wrong. 3 hours later, Jade left the house with 4 suitcases and a face full of barely controlled rage. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look at us. She just loaded her car and drove away, and I watched from the window until her taillights disappeared around the corner. Only then did I allow myself to exhale. The next 72 hours were some of the strangest of my life. The house felt different without Jade's presence. Lighter somehow, but also uncomfortably quiet. Marcus moved through the rooms like he was learning to navigate them for the first time, touching furniture and walls as if confirming they were real. I caught him several times just standing in doorways, staring at nothing, processing 3 years of lies. On the second day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Hartley? A woman's voice, tight with emotion. This is Bethany Castellano. I think we need to talk about my husband and your daughter-in-law. My heart sank. How did you get this number? Derek left his phone unlocked this morning. I saw messages from someone named Jade. A lot of messages. Her voice broke. I started searching and found your son's Instagram. Found Jade's account. Put the pieces together. Is it true? Has my husband been having an affair with her? I closed my eyes. This was the part I had dreaded. The collateral damage. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Castellano. Yes, I believe they've been seeing each other for approximately 5 months. The sound she made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. 5 months. We have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old baby. I've been home with our children while he's been... She couldn't finish the sentence. Do you have proof? I need proof for my lawyer. I hesitated. This wasn't part of my plan, but this woman deserved to know the truth just as much as Marcus had. Yes, I have messages, photos, hotel receipts. If you want them, I can send them to you. Please, she whispered. Send me everything. I spent the next hour compiling a file and emailing it to Bethany Castellano. As I hit send, I felt the weight of what I'd just done. I hadn't just exposed Jade's affair. I just destroyed Derek's marriage, possibly his relationship with his children. 2 families blown apart by one person's selfishness. Marcus found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop. What's wrong? I told him about Bethany's call. He sat down heavily across from me. Derek's married? With kids? Jade knew. There are messages where she mentions his wife, jokes about it. I showed him the relevant screenshots. She didn't care who she hurt as long as she got what she wanted. Jesus. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. That poor woman. Those poor kids. I gave her all the evidence, I said. She's filing for divorce. She deserves to know the truth, just like you did. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said quietly, Do you think Jade ever loved me? Even a little bit? It was the question I'd been hoping he wouldn't ask because I didn't have a comforting answer. I don't know. Maybe in her own way at the beginning. But Jade's version of love is transactional. She loves what people can do for her, not who they are. 3 years, he said, staring at his hands. 3 years of my life with someone who saw me as a financial opportunity. How did I not see it? Because she's good at what she does, I said. And because you were vulnerable. You were grieving Dad, carrying guilt about that last fight. She targeted those vulnerabilities deliberately. That's not your fault, Marcus. Feels like it is. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life. I hope you're proud of yourself. Then another. Derek's wife is taking the kids. She got a restraining order. He lost everything because of you. And another. This is all your fault. You couldn't just mind your own business. I showed the messages to Marcus. His jaw tightened. She's blaming you for consequences of her own actions. That's what people like Jade do, I said tiredly. They never take responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. The messages kept coming throughout the day. Some were threatening. Some were pleading, Jade begging me to talk to Bethany, to fix this mess I'd created. Some were accusatory, claiming I'd ruined multiple lives because I was a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see people happy. I blocked each number as they came, but I could feel the anxiety building in my chest. I had prepared for Jade to fight back against Marcus and me. I hadn't fully considered the ripple effects, the other people who would be hurt by the truth I'd exposed. On the 3rd day, things escalated. Jade posted a new series of Instagram stories, and this time she wasn't being vague. She named me directly. Megan Hartley destroyed my marriage because she couldn't handle her son choosing someone over her. She stalked me, invaded my privacy, and fabricated evidence to turn my husband against me. Now she's gone after my friend's marriage too. This woman is dangerous and vindictive. The comments flooded in. Hundreds of them, mostly from people who didn't know the full story and were reacting to Jade's carefully constructed narrative. Toxic mother-in-law from hell. Classic narcissistic behavior. Someone needs to stop this woman. The wealthy think they can destroy anyone they want. Marcus saw the posts and went pale. Mom, this is getting out of control. She's trying to destroy your reputation. Let her try, I said, but my hands were shaking as I set down my coffee cup. The truth will come out. When? After she's convinced thousands of people that you're some kind of monster? Marcus was pacing now, his anxiety feeding off mine. My company's HR department called me today. They saw the posts. They want to have a meeting about personal matters affecting workplace reputation. I could lose my job over this. That hit me like a punch to the gut. They can't fire you over your personal life. They can if it becomes a distraction or reflects badly on the company. And with Jade's posts going viral, he showed me his phone. The latest Instagram story had been screenshotted and shared to Twitter, where it was getting thousands of retweets. It's everywhere, Mom. People are calling for you to be doxxed. Someone started a hashtag. This is a nightmare. I stared at the screen, watching my name being dragged through digital mud by strangers who knew nothing about the situation. My chest felt tight. After 30 years of building a reputation in the business world, after carefully constructing a life of dignity and respect, I was being reduced to a hashtag and a villain in someone else's story. I need to fix this, I said, reaching for my phone. How? Marcus asked. If you respond publicly, you'll just feed into it. If you release the evidence, you'll look vindictive just like she's claiming. There's no winning here. He was right. Jade had maneuvered us into an impossible position. She'd struck first with her victim narrative, and now anything we did to defend ourselves would look like exactly what she was accusing us of. Wealthy people using their resources to destroy someone less powerful. That's when my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. My attorney, Richard Morrison, who had been helping Marcus with the divorce paperwork. Megan, he said without preamble, we have a problem. Jade's attorney filed an emergency motion this morning. She's claiming emotional distress and requesting a temporary restraining order against both you and Marcus. She's also demanding immediate spousal support pending the divorce, and she's asking for $50,000 to cover relocation costs and therapy for the trauma you allegedly caused. That's insane, I said. We have evidence that her attorney is claiming was obtained illegally. They're arguing that everything you collected is fruit of the poisonous tree, inadmissible because you violated her privacy rights. Richard's voice was grim. They're also threatening to file criminal charges against you for stalking and harassment. She's living in my son's house. How is it stalking to be in my own family member's home? Her attorney is spinning it differently. They're saying you deliberately moved in with the intention of surveilling her, that you installed monitoring software without her knowledge, that you've been waging a campaign of psychological warfare against a vulnerable young woman. He paused. Megan, I need you to be honest with me. Is there any part of what you did that could be construed as illegal? I thought about the data recovery software, the recordings, the way I'd accessed Jade's email. I was careful, I said. Everything I did was within legal bounds in Connecticut. One-party consent for recordings. She gave me access to her devices. I didn't hack anything. But you were deliberately trying to gather evidence against her without her knowledge. A good attorney could argue that shows malicious intent. Richard sighed. Look, I think we can fight this and win eventually. But in the short term, this is going to get messy. And with her social media campaign gaining traction, public opinion is already against you. That matters in family court more than it should. After I hung up, I sat very still, processing what this meant. Jade wasn't just fighting back. She was going scorched earth. She was willing to lie, manipulate the legal system, and destroy our reputations publicly if it meant she could come out ahead. Marcus was watching me with growing alarm. What did Richard say? I told him. I watched the color drain from his face as he understood the full scope of what we were facing. This is my fault, he said. I brought her into our lives. I married her. I was too weak to see what she was doing. And now she's going to destroy us both because I couldn't. Stop, I said firmly. This is not your fault. Jade made her choices. We made ours. Now we deal with the consequences. But how? Marcus's voice cracked. She's winning, Mom. She's controlling the narrative. She has public sympathy, and her lawyer is making us look like criminals. How do we fight someone who has no moral boundaries? I thought about that question for a long moment. How do you fight someone who's willing to lie, to manipulate, to destroy anyone who gets in their way? How do you maintain your integrity while dealing with someone who has none? And then I realized something. Jade had made a critical mistake. In her rush to paint herself as the victim, she'd told specific lies that I could disprove. She'd made claims about her relationship, her marriage, her finances that didn't match reality. She'd created a public narrative that was verifiable false in multiple ways. We don't fight her, I said slowly. We let her keep talking. We let her tell her story, make her claims, dig herself deeper. And then, when she's fully committed to her version of events, we present the truth all at once. Not defensively, not as a response to her accusations, just as a clear, documented timeline of facts. That could take weeks, Marcus said. Maybe months. Our reputations will be destroyed by then. Maybe, I admitted. But if we try to fight this piecemeal, we'll look exactly like she's claiming. Vindictive, controlling, desperate. If we wait, if we're patient and strategic, we let her overplay her hand. Marcus looked at me like I was suggesting we jump off a cliff. I don't know if I can do that. Watching people believe her lies, having my job threatened, seeing what this is doing to you. I know, I said softly. I know it's hard, but I've been in business long enough to know that sometimes the only way to win is to be more patient than your opponent. Jade is impulsive, reactive, emotional. She'll make mistakes if we give her enough time and space. And if she doesn't? If she wins anyway? I took his hand across the table. Then at least we'll know we tried to do the right thing. We told the truth. We didn't compromise our values to beat someone at their own game. That has to count for something. Marcus squeezed my hand, and I saw tears in his eyes. I don't deserve you as a mother, not after how I treated you these past few years. You were being manipulated by an expert manipulator, I said, and you're still my son. That doesn't change, no matter what happens. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I'd made the right choice. Every instinct I'd honed over 3 decades in business was screaming at me to be strategic, to wait for the right moment. But another part of me, the part that was just a mother watching her son suffer, wanted to release everything immediately, to fight back with everything I had. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another message from an unknown number. You can't hide forever. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I would be strong again. Tomorrow I would be strategic and patient and all the things I needed to be. But tonight, alone in the dark, I let myself feel afraid. Because the truth was, I didn't know if we would win this. I didn't know if patience would be enough. Jade was proving to be a more formidable opponent than I'd anticipated, and the rules of engagement were nothing like the business negotiations I'd mastered over the years. This was personal. This was about family and reputation, and the court of public opinion, where facts mattered less than feelings and truth, was whatever story people wanted to believe. And for the first time since this all began, I wondered if I'd underestimated exactly how much damage Jade could do before the truth finally caught up with her. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 5 days after Jade's social media campaign began, I received a phone call from a woman named Taylor Chen. She introduced herself as a former college roommate of Jade's from 7 years ago. I saw the Instagram posts, Taylor said, her voice hesitant. And I couldn't stay quiet anymore. What she's saying about you, about being this innocent victim, that's not who Jade is. That's never been who Jade is. I'm listening, I said carefully. In college, Jade did this same thing to our other roommate. Moved in with her boyfriend, convinced him his friends were toxic, isolated him from everyone who cared about him, then cleaned out his bank account and disappeared. She bragged about it to us like it was some kind of accomplishment. Taylor took a shaky breath. When I saw her playing victim online, I knew she was doing it again. I have old text messages, emails, screenshots. I kept them because what she did was so disturbing, I thought maybe someone would need proof someday. Would you be willing to share those with me? I asked. I'll do better than that, Taylor said. I'll share them publicly. Jade needs to be stopped before she destroys more lives. Over the next 48 hours, Taylor posted a detailed Twitter thread with receipts, messages from Jade bragging about manipulating her college boyfriend, screenshots of her planning similar schemes, testimony from other people who had known Jade over the years and witnessed her pattern of behavior. The thread went viral, reaching even more people than Jade's original victim narrative. Suddenly, the tide of public opinion began to shift. People started questioning Jade's story. Comments on her Instagram changed from supportive to skeptical. This sounds familiar, one person wrote, linking to Taylor's thread. Maybe there's more to this story than we're hearing. Marcus showed me the changing sentiment with cautious hope in his eyes. People are starting to see through her. It's a start, I said. But I knew we needed more than public opinion. We needed legal vindication. That came 2 weeks later. Jade's emergency motion for a restraining order was heard in family court. Her attorney presented her case. The grieving wife, driven from her home by a controlling mother-in-law and manipulated husband. It was a compelling performance. Then Richard Morrison stood up and methodically dismantled every claim. He presented the timeline of Jade's affair with evidence she couldn't deny. He showed the fraudulent loan documents. He played the recording where Jade discussed faking abuse allegations. He presented testimony from Bethany Castellano about the affair's impact on her family. And he showed the messages Taylor had provided, establishing a pattern of behavior spanning years. The judge listened to everything with an increasingly stern expression. When Richard finished, she turned to Jade's attorney. "Does your client have any response to this evidence?" Jade's attorney looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. He'd clearly been fed a selective version of events and was now realizing how badly he'd been misled. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to review these materials." "Motion for restraining order denied," the judge said flatly. "Motion for emergency spousal support denied. The court finds that the petitioner has failed to demonstrate credible claims of harassment or abuse. Furthermore, the evidence presented suggests the petitioner may have engaged in fraud and adultery, which are grounds for divorce in this state." She looked directly at Jade. "Ma'am, I strongly suggest you settle this divorce quickly and quietly, because if this goes to trial, you will not like the outcome." Marcus squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I squeezed back just as hard. Jade's attorney called Richard the next day. They wanted to settle. Jade would accept the original offer, her personal belongings, her car, $10,000, and a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent her from discussing the marriage or our family publicly. In exchange, we wouldn't pursue charges for the fraudulent loan or release additional evidence of the affair. "Take it," I told Marcus. "This is as good as it gets." He signed the papers 3 days later. Just like that, 3 years of marriage dissolved into a stack of legal documents. Jade took her settlement and moved back to Ohio. Her Instagram account went private shortly after, her influencer career effectively over once brands learned the full story. Derek's divorce also finalized. Bethany got custody of their children and the house. Last I heard, Derek was living in a studio apartment and working 2 jobs to pay child support. I felt sorry for him in a distant way. But mostly, I felt sorry for Bethany and those children who would grow up with the knowledge that their father had betrayed them all. The hardest part came after everything was legally settled. Marcus fell into a deep depression that lasted months. He started therapy twice a week, finally processing not just the trauma of his marriage to Jade, but also the unresolved grief over his father and the childhood wounds he'd been carrying for decades. "I think I married Jade because I wanted to prove I could make Dad proud," he told me one evening over dinner at my house. I'd moved back to the mansion, but Marcus visited several times a week. Like if I had a successful marriage and a stable life, it would somehow make up for disappointing him before he died. "Your father was proud of you," I said gently. "That last fight, it wasn't about disappointment. It was about fear. He was afraid you were giving up on yourself." "I was," Marcus admitted. "I am. I don't know who I'm supposed to be without someone telling me." "Then maybe it's time to figure that out," I said. "Not who your father wanted you to be, or who Jade tried to make you into, or even who I hoped you'd become. Just who you actually are." That journey took time. Marcus eventually left his marketing job and went back to school, finishing the MBA he'd abandoned years ago. He started dating again, carefully, with a therapist's guidance on recognizing healthy relationships. He became more selective about who he let into his life, more aware of his own boundaries and needs. As for me, I learned that protecting someone you love sometimes means letting them experience pain you could prevent. I learned that being right doesn't always feel victorious. I learned that family is messy and complicated, and sometimes the people you die for will hurt you deeply without meaning to. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Marcus and I had lunch at a small cafe in Greenwich. The autumn sun was warm on our faces. He looked healthier than he had in years. The weight he'd gained during his marriage had come off. The dark circles under his eyes were gone. "I never thanked you properly," he said suddenly, "for staying, for documenting everything, for being patient when I wasn't ready to hear the truth." "You don't need to thank me for being your mother," I said. "Yes, I do." He reached across the table and took my hand. because a lot of parents would have just told me to figure it out myself, or they would have forced the issue before I was ready. You did it the hard way, the way that actually helped me, instead of just making yourself feel better. I felt tears prick my eyes. I made a lot of mistakes with you growing up. I wasn't there enough. I prioritized work over being present. You were building a life for our family, Marcus said. I understand that now. And when it really mattered, when I needed you most, you showed up. You stayed even when I treated you terribly. That's what I'll remember. We sat there holding hands across the table. Two people who had been broken by loss and betrayal and manipulation, slowly learning how to be a family again. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I first discovered Jade's affair. There was no triumphant vindication, no moment of pure victory. But there was something better. There was honesty. There was healing. There was a relationship between mother and son that had been tested and had survived. And there was the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had protected my child one last time, even when he was a grown man who should have been able to protect himself. Even when it meant enduring months of humiliation and uncertainty. Even when I wasn't sure it would work. Sometimes love looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like gathering evidence in silence. Sometimes it looks like showing someone the painful truth at exactly the moment they're finally ready to see it. That's what I learned in that kitchen on the night my son yelled at me to leave his house. That's what I learned in the months that followed, watching him break and slowly rebuild himself into someone stronger. I learned that being a mother never stops, no matter how old your child gets. The job just changes. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is wait in the shadows with the truth in your hands, ready to offer it the moment your child is finally ready to take it. Marcus squeezed my hand once more, then let go to pick up his coffee. We talked about his classes, about a woman he'd started seeing, about plans to take a trip together next summer. Just the two of us, somewhere Johnson would have loved. And for the first time in 6 years, since the day my husband died and left me alone to figure out how to be both mother and father to a grieving son, I felt like maybe we were going to be okay. Not perfect, not undamaged, but okay. And sometimes, okay is enough.